bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryam karavavahai tejasvina vaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening and namaste, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday evening reading and discussion of Swami Ranganathananda's absolutely marvelous book, Divine Grace. It is powerful, it is instructive, and it brings us to the conclusion that to be fully human is to be fully divine. And the Swami explains this in an amazing way over a very short number of pages, only 83 pages in the book. So before we begin, is there anything left from prior reading and discussion that needs to be brought to the congregation's attention as we sit here this evening? Any thoughts or comments that need to be dealt with? All right, dears. Please tell us where we're beginning. Swayam?
Yes, hi Margie, please correct if I'm wrong, but I think we are somewhere in the bottom of page 45.
Actually, we're on page 46, second paragraph is supposed to be starting, but it's up to. Okay.
I think I will start from page 45, the last paragraph, just to have some continuity.
Sounds great.
So, on one occasion, Girish felt depressed that he could not keep up with his spiritual routine. Sri Ramakrishna was all along training Girish in a sense of perfect freedom and spontaneity. Hearing his complaint about his inability to submit himself to any routine of spiritual discipline because of his uncertain schedule of life as a dramatist and theatre manager, Sri Ramakrishna said in an exalted mood, "All right, you give me your Wakalatnama or power of attorney. Henceforth, I assume responsibility for your spiritual life. You need not do any routine spiritual practice." At this, Girish heaved a sigh of relief. He felt happy to think that Sri Ramakrishna, as his guru, had assumed full responsibility for his spiritual progress. But as days passed, Girish began to realize that by this he had put around his neck a noose of love, 100 excuse me, noose of love 100 times stronger than the bondage of routine spiritual practices, and that he had begun constantly to dwell on the thought of Sri Ramakrishna and his divine grace, reducing himself to nothing in the process. His life eventually became a continual meditation on Sri Ramakrishna, which gently, unknown to himself, wiped away all the stain, all the evil practices and habits from his life, including drinking, without Sri Ramakrishna ever once admonishing him to do so. Later, Sri Ramakrishna treated Girish, though still a householder like his other householder disciples, on a par with his monastic disciples. And after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, Girish referred to himself as a miracle of the divine grace of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna illustrated in the modern age.
Hang on just one moment, dear. Girish Ghosh became a true saint. The leaders of the Ramakrishna order would send the young monks to him to discuss the life of Sri Ramakrishna because he was so involved with Sri Ramakrishna right up until the very end. He was one of the people who was very frequently in the room with Sri Ramakrishna at the Kashipur garden house where Sri Ramakrishna passed away. And when it says that Sri Ramakrishna treated him on a par with his monastic disciples, this is exactly how he dealt with him. Those who were to become monastic disciples, like Narendra, who became Swami Vivekananda, and Brahmananda, Premananda, and so on. And of course, it was Girish to whom Sri Ramakrishna addressed his question on January 1st, 1886, known as Kalpataru Day. What is it that you see in me that causes you to say all these things? That is to say, Girish was making it known widely because he had a very wide following among the intelligentsia and the cultured people of Calcutta. He was making it known that Sri Ramakrishna was an avatar. And Girish, who was bowed down at his feet when Sri Ramakrishna asked him this question, Girish said, "He whom Valmiki and Vyasa was unable to describe, what shall I say of him?" And Sri Ramakrishna then went into a spiritual ecstasy, conferred his blessings, full blessings, on, by full blessings, I mean he granted every spiritual wish that Girish could have. Conferred his full blessings on Girish and each of the other 30 disciples that was in the garden house, in the garden of that garden house at Kashipur on January 1st, 1886. So in this way too, Girish served to unlock, by his humility and his accuracy. He was, of course, when mentioning Valmiki and Vyasa, he was pointing toward Rama and Krishna. And Sri Ramakrishna had said often during his life, he who was Rama, he who was Krishna, is present here, pointing to his own body as Sri Ramakrishna. As he didn't say Sri, as Ramakrishna. So this is just a bit more about Girish Ghosh. There's much, much to be known. Swami Chaitanananda has written many books on the people and events of Sri Ramakrishna's life. The thickest book that he wrote is on Girish Ghosh, for any of you who are curious as to who this great soul was. Any other comments or questions before Swayam reads on?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
So, is it because Sri Ramakrishna himself gave permission to Girish to give his power of attorney, that Girish was able to dwell constantly on the thought of Sri Ramakrishna and his divine grace. Because being a playwright I'm sure that he would have had to focus on other things. How did he manage to keep his mind on Sri Ramakrishna?
Everything was seen through that perspective, dear. Everything was seen, as it were, through Sri Ramakrishna's eyes, and from the perspective that Sri Ramakrishna had awakened in him. The divine truth is present in all of us. It is there in its full measure. It remains only to be awakened. So Sri Ramakrishna had awakened this fully. So Girish saw everything through that lens. And everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of Sri Ramakrishna and the avatar's influence on the life of humanity. And his plays became even more transcendently wonderful than they had been before as a result. And the performances at his theater, as I said, he was very well thought of and well known in the elite circles of Kolkata in those days. And so they noticed the change in him, and so many of them became interested, if not enamored of, interested in, if not enamored of, Sri Ramakrishna. Again, this is all detailed in Chaitanananda's book. All of these, not all perhaps, but many of these cultural and social lions of Calcutta and how Girish influenced them. So it all became seeing through the perspective that Sri Ramakrishna had awakened in him, which was, of course, identified by Girish Ghosh as Sri Ramakrishna's perspective. Does that get it?
Yes, it does.
And it's a very good question. How could he do this? And this is why all those young monastics were sent to him, because he remained in that state of seeing everything through the master's perspective. Though Girish, like everyone else, did have his ups and downs. And at one time, Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj, had to come and rescue him from a depressed state that he'd fallen into. Girish, had begged Sri Ramakrishna to be born as his son after he passed away. Well, a son was born to Girish, but the boy lived only 3 years. And Girish was despondent at the loss of the boy and for other reasons. And so finally, Swami Brahmananda had to come and reassure him that this was just a trough in the waves of life. We have our high waves of achievement and transcendence, and we have our shallow to deep troughs. And Girish had fallen into a deep trough that lasted for some time. So Brahmananda came, and because Brahmananda was and definitely an embodiment of Sri Ramakrishna's being, that's how everyone saw Raja Maharaj. He even looked like Sri Ramakrishna, and particularly from the back. People would see him from the back and they would think, what? How could that be possible? Sri Ramakrishna's here. Anyway, Brahmananda was able to reassure him, and Girish was able to recover his good spirits and soar even higher, which is what Brahmananda told him would happen. Any other comments or questions about anything that we've been discussing? Okay, dear, please read on.
Sri Ramakrishna illustrated in the modern age the truth of the statement of the Narada Bhakti Sutras quoted earlier, that pure bhakti can be experienced by a seeker through the grace of a great saint or through an atom of grace from the Blessed Lord. Speaking on My Master in New York in 1896, Swami Vivekananda emphasized this tangibility of spiritual giving and receiving. He alone teaches who has something to give. For teaching is not talking, teaching is not imparting doctrines, it is communicating. Spirituality can be communicated just as really as I can give you a flower. This is true in the most literal sense. One touch, one glance can change a whole life. I have read about Buddha and Christ and Muhammad, about all those different luminaries of ancient times, how they would stand up and say, "Be thou whole," and the man became whole. I now found it to be true, and when I myself saw this man, all skepticism was brushed aside. It could be done, and my master used to say, religion can be given and taken more tangibly, more really than anything else in the world. A very remarkable incident in Sri Ramakrishna's life illustrates the truth of the above words of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Shardananda, in his biography of Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, titles the chapter that narrates this incident as The Master's Self-Revelation and the Bestowal of Freedom from Fear. On January 1st, 1886, about 8.5 months before Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, Sri Ramakrishna was lying seriously sick of cancer of the throat in a rented house at Kashipur in North Calcutta. Being a holiday, several householder delegates had gathered in the house in the afternoon. The weather being pleasant and the master being slightly better, he expressed a desire to come out of his room and have a walk in the garden. As he was moving about, the devotees came and bowed to him in reverence. When Girish Chandra Ghosh came forward to bow to him, Sri Ramakrishna addressed him in these words, "Girish, I find you saying to one and all so many things about me, that I am an incarnation of God. What have you seen and understood about me that you proclaim such things about me?" Unmoved in the least by such an abrupt and strange question, Girish replied in a voice choked with emotion, "What more can one like me say about him whose greatness the sages Vyasa and Valmiki could not find words to express?" Sri Ramakrishna was charmed at this fervent utterance of the devoted Girish and blessed him with the words, "Tomar Chaitanya Hauk, may your spiritual consciousness be awakened." And hardly had he said those words than he entered into an ecstatic mood and blessed all those who came to salute him. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, as they were thus bowing to him, the sea of the monster's compassion transcended.
Masters.
Yeah, the sea, SEAC, of the Master's compassion transcended all bounds and brought about a wonderful phenomenon. We had almost daily seeing the Master at Dakshineshwar losing himself in grace and compassion for certain devotees and blessing them by his extraordinary potent touch in the state of divine semi consciousness. He began touching each one of the devotees assembled on that day in that divine mood. The joy of the devotees, it is superfluous to say, knew no bounds in the act of the Master. Unable to utter a single word owing to that wonderful occurrence, some were only looking steadfastly at him, as if they were under the spell of a mantra. Some others called aloud to all within the house to come and be blessed by receiving the Master's grace. And still others collected flowers and worshipped him with them, uttering mantras. Soon the ecstasy of the Master came to an end, and the devotees too were again in a normal state of consciousness. Should I stop here so we can reflect on that?
No, this is just what was talked about before. There's no need to go over it again. I'd forgotten that it came so quickly after that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone on about it. But nevertheless, it bears repetition. And if you read the book, The Great Master, there's a great deal more about that day and what the men who were to become the monastic disciples did and what Holy Mother did and all that. There's a great deal more about that so-called Kalpataru Day. So it's worth finding that in the Great Master. Of course, the book itself is very highly recommended. It's Swami Shardananda's biography of the Master, and it is meticulously researched so that there's not a superfluous or errant word in it, and it really highlights those things that Swami Shardananda thought were most important about the Master's incarnation. It's really quite a book. Swami Chaitanananda retranslated it out of the Bengali and published it as Sri Ramakrishna, His Divine Play. So there are two translations, one by Swami Nikhilananda, which is published as The Great Master, and then there's Swami Chaitanananda's, which is more modern English than that spoken and written by Swami Nikhilananda. And it is, both books are well worth your attention. There are nuances in both translations that are worth pondering on. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear.
Okay. When questioned later, each devotee said that he had been blessed with a divine experience on the lines of his own chosen spiritual path. This truth of the self-revelation of God or divine grace becomes clear when we bear in mind two facts, namely, the nature of God as pure Chit or consciousness, infinite and non-dual, and its being the very self of ourself and not any external object or any extra cosmic deity. God is, as described by the Srimad Bhagavatam in the same elephant's hymn, the Atma Pradipa, the light of the soul. Salutations to him who is the light of the soul, the one witness of every event in the universe, the supreme self of all. Salutations to him who is beyond the grasp of speech, and even of all mind and thought. And mukti or liberation is presented not as an otherworldly salvation but an attainment here and now, as the
I think you read that as deliberation. I think it's of liberation, dear, and mukti or liberation.
yes. Okay. I did say that, but maybe I was too fast, so it wasn't clear.
Ah,
Shall I repeat again?
please.
Okay. And mukti or liberation is presented not as an otherworldly salvation, but an attainment here and now, as the Upanishads, the Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures emphasize again and again, because the kingdom of God is within man himself. In the words of the Shiva Gita, moksha or liberation has no particular dwelling house. It is neither like going to another village. Moksha means only the destruction of the knots of the heart, consisting of ignorance or spiritual blindness. That's the end of 18.
Okay, this is why Sri Ramakrishna is regarded as the eternal teacher, the eternal guru. Guru means remover of darkness, remover of this ignorance, this spiritual blindness. So the destruction of the knots of the heart. The knots of the heart are those things that continue to keep us bound. That's why knots, K-N-O-T-S, knots of the heart. These things that we keep going back to are knots of the heart, as described in the scriptures, consisting of ignorance and spiritual blindness. It's not as if we're bad for having these knots of the heart. It is as natural as the earth rotating and the sun then appearing in the sky and disappearing in the evening. There's nothing unnatural about it. And so from time to time, the eternal teacher takes human form to dispel this darkness and blindness and ignorance. Guru, remover of darkness. Any other comments or questions from anyone?
I have a question, Brother Shankara.
Yes,
So,
dear.
in the previous page, it says, when questioned later, each devotee said that he had been blessed with a divine experience on the lines of his own chosen spiritual path. So, by that, does it mean that those who had chosen the bhakti part saw him as an incarnation? Those who chose the jnana path saw the oneness? How are we to interpret that?
Yes, each one according to the way it's said in the Great Master is that each one had an experience of their chosen ideal. Ranganathananda just put it in words that not everybody's familiar with the term chosen ideal. These Shivananda members who were at that meeting in 1978 in Perth, Australia, the Swami probably was sensitive to the fact that not every one of them would understand this. So this is why he put it in the words he did. So it's just as you said, dear. Some have a chosen ideal that is very much a God with form. Some have the formless, even nameless and formless divine presence. very hard to grasp by the mind, but known to the heart. And so this is what he was awakening in each of these people. Whatever path they had been following toward a realization of their chosen ideal, that he awakened in them.
So, how about those who are following bhakti or Raj Yoga paths? How would they have had that?
Well, dear, the ones who were following the bhakti path, who might they have been following? They might have been Rama devotees, they might have been Krishna devotees, they might have been devotees of the master himself. There had to be some reason they were there in the garden that day. They were drawn to the master. How the Raja Yogis would have experienced it? How does a Raja Yogi experience it? A complete stilling of the thought waves of the mind. And so pure chit, pure consciousness, this non-dual, beyond all description of name and form, this non-dual, and of course it can't be experienced because when the thought waves of the mind are stilled, there is no mind to read this, to experience it. It's a state of realization. So this is how the Raja Yogis would have experienced it. A complete stilling of the thought waves of the mind, and that pure consciousness, or nirguna atman, they would have known that. This is what the Raja Yoga is seeking. Raja Yogi is seeking the realization of the nirguna atman that is resident within each of us. The Atman also has its saguna aspects. This is the witness face of the Atman. So Raja Yogis come to know that very well too. This is what they contemplate, concentrate on, and that becomes meditation as they concentrate their attention on that witness presence and seeing everything as something that arises and passes away, and therefore not deserving of more than any necessary attention. So that's the best I can come as to how the Raja Yogis would have realized it. And the Bhaktas, of course, they would have had the full experience of their chosen ideal, and some of them said this in so many words. Again, you can read all this in real detail in the Great Master or Sri Ramakrishna, his divine play. Their descriptions of the description by Swami Shardananda of Kalpataru Day, and he was witnessing it from the roof of the garden house because they'd gone up there to clean and air out Sri Ramakrishna's bedding. 3 of the direct disciples were on the roof and were witnessing this. They did not take part. They received their grace from the Master personally and directly at exactly the right time in their own unfoldment. Each of the monastic disciples. Very good question, Swami. Anything else from anyone? Okay, dear, please.
Thank you for that explanation, Brother Shankara. It did clarify a lot for me.
Good.
Okay. 19. Some world's mystics on divine grace. The idea of self-revelation of God is a recurring theme in the writings of several mystics of the East and West. Says John Ruiz, God in the depths of us receives God who comes to us. God in the depths of us receives God who comes to us. It is God contemplating God.
Hold on just one moment. I don't know if he's going to say these words, but this was said by Meister Eckhart, the great German mystic and saint, who said that eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. So this is exactly what is being said here by this other saint. God in the depths of us. Receive God who comes to us. It is God contemplating God. It is God seeing God. Okay?
Jalaluddin Rumi conveys in a song the message which God sent to a devotee who began to doubt his existence because he did not receive a clear answer to his prayers. And now this is the poem. Thy call, O God, is my call, I am here. Thy pain and pain, message mine so clear, and all thy strives to reach the ear of mine, that I am drawing thee, it is a sign. Thy love woe is my grace. Why doesn't thou cry? Thy call, O God, means 100, here am I. Says Meister Eckhart, suppose a man is hiding and he stirs, he shows his whereabouts thereby, and God does the same.
This is that hide and seek metaphor that Sri Ramakrishna so often used. Suppose a man is hiding and he stirs, he shows his whereabouts thereby. God does the same.
No one could ever have found God. He gives himself away. Sings a Sufi mystic, all you have been and seen and done and thought, not you, but I have seen and been and wrought. WROUGHT. Pilgrim, pilgrimage, and road was but myself at my own door. Come, you lost atoms, come, you lost atoms, to your center draw. Rays that have wandered into darkness wide, return, and back into your sun subside. Emphasizing the need to combine the role of Ishvara Kripa with Purushkara in spiritual life, the Sufi
Ishvara Rupa,
uh,
Ishvara Kripa,
Kripa,
Ishvara Kripa. This
Ishvara
is the grace. This is the grace of the incarnation. Ishvara Kripa means a grace. So combining grace with self-effort.
Sufi, should I start again? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Emphasizing the need to combine the role of Ishvara Kripa with Purushkara in spiritual life. The Sufi Sheikh Sadi of Iran sang, very right is thy faith and pride in his grace, and true it is that it works, like rain shower on a tilled field. But to what avail all shower, if ye have not sown the field?
Ah, you see, the grace of the rain is always falling. But unless you have sown the field, unless you have planted the seeds through your own self-effort, then what will grow? The only thing that will grow will be the weeds that were already in the field before you tilled it, before you turned the soil over. Any farmer will tell you this. So please read that again. That's beautiful.
Very right is thy faith and pride in his grace, and true it is that it works like rain shower on a tilled field. But to what avail all shower if ye have not sown the field? Sings Baba Farid, many of whose songs have been included in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikhs. His grace may fall on us at any time. There is no definite rule regulating it. Some do not get it even after performing austerities and night long vigils, whilst it is forced on those who lie asleep. Is this literal sleep, Brother Shankara, or is that a metaphor for those who are just not like too entangled in the worldly life? Can someone get grace in actual sleep?
Yes. Oh, yes. Have you not read the story of Scrooge?
Yeah.
This is a very, very powerful and very holy book. The story is published under the name of Christmas Carol. The story of Ebenezer Scrooge, who goes to sleep on Christmas Eve, has the experience of the spirit of Christmas past, the spirit of Christmas present, and the spirit of Christmas future. He has these three experiences. And when he wakes the next morning, he is exclaiming over and over, I am not the man I was. I am not the man I was. I am not the man I was. And this boon that he is given is because of the love of another human being. Is the only friend he ever had, though he did not return that friendship in lifetime. Marley loved him, was his friend. Marley was capable of this. Scrooge was not. As it's said in the book, when you went to take possession of his few measly sticks of furniture and his home, because that had been left to Scrooge, because it was actually owned by the company that they owned together. But when you went to sign for these things, what did you feel? Did you feel any love or compassion or thanks or gratitude? No, you miserable, scrivening old sinner. You felt only greed. And so this story of Scrooge is, I encourage anyone and everyone to watch that film made in 1951, starring Alistair Sim. And it was premiered not under the name of Christmas Carol, but simply Scrooge. So you can find it on YouTube. You can get a DVD of it to watch at home, download it, however it is that you want to watch it. But I strongly encourage everyone to watch that film. And you can see the great spiritual unfoldment of Charles Dickens, who was able to write this story with such great understanding. For example, on the morning after his, not the morning after, but the next work day after Scrooge has his experience, he experiences Christmas Day joyfully, sharing it with his nephew and so on, and other things. But on the next work day, when his clerk, Bob Cratchit, comes back to work, what does Scrooge say to him after telling him he's going to raise his salary and so on? And Cratchit is, of course, amazed. What has happened to this man? And Scrooge says, And this bears real contemplation. What Scrooge says, Bob, I have not taken leave of my senses. I have come to them. And this is exactly what Patanjali says happens to us when we begin to practice the practices that he suggests, and as we're studying on Saturdays. So this is not imagination. This is something known to these saints, and it was known to Charles Dickens and communicated to us so beautifully in that book, which was turned into that marvelous movie.
Yes, I did watch that movie, Brother Shankara, when you had recommended some time back, and I understood the sort of the big picture, but because of the British accent, the some of the dialogues were difficult to follow. I wish there was a transcript so I could read it, but I guess
Well, read
those
the
days
book.
they didn't.
Read the book.
Oh,
Get the book. It's a very short book. It's about the same length as this Divine Grace book. It's not a long book. And it was published under the name A Christmas Carol. And you can get it very inexpensively online, a used copy perhaps. It'll cost you probably more for the shipping to you than it does for the book itself. But get one with the original illustrations, not a later edition with the new illustrations. Get the one with the original illustrations that Dickens himself had approved, because they really communicate Scrooge and the other characters in the book so well. A Christmas Carol. So yeah, that there won't be any problem with accent. There'll be still a little problem with the rhetoric and diction. You'll have to reread some paragraphs more than once to follow what Dickens is saying, because people wrote and spoke differently in those days.
yeah.
But
Too bad they
it's
didn't have
very
subtitles.
understandable.
Yeah. I said they didn't have subtitles. I looked for that too, but
No, they didn't have subtitles.
yeah.
uh, uh, thank goodness if you listen to it more than once, if you watch the movie more than once, your ear kind of tunes itself to the British accent, and you begin to understand. But you're right. Some of it is in the yeah. It has to be listened to more than once before your ear tunes itself. It's like listening to some of the Swamis. Some of the Swamis, their accents are, at least for us who were born and raised here in America, speak American English. Their Indian English and their accents and their diction and their rhetoric are sometimes hard to understand. So we have some time left. Please reread just what you read and then read into the next.
Okay. Sings Baba Farid, many of whose songs have been included in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikhs. His grace may fall on us at any time. There is no definite rule regulating it. Some do not get it even after performing great austerities and night long vigils, while it is forced on those who lie asleep. The charming Sufi poet saint of India, Sarmad, the friend of Dara Shikoh, whom Dara's brother Emperor Aurangzeb got executed for emphasizing the universal vision of tariqah, or spiritual path and experience of the mystical Islam, over the rigid, creed bound Sharia do's and don'ts of the dogmatic Islam, sang of God giving Himself to man. If I were pure, never shall I taste the sweets of forgiveness of sins. If I were holy, I could never behold the tears. O love, O mercy, O divine humility, O forgiveness, O pity and compassion. If I were pure, I should never have known thee. Would thou love one who never died for thee, or even die for one who had not died for thee? And if God dieth not for man, and giveth not himself eternally for man, man could not exist. For man is love, and God is love. Every kindness to another is a little death. In the divine image, none can exist but by brotherhood.
Please read that again, dear, and let us hear the truth that the reason that Ranganathananda remembered this word for word and committed it to memory is because of its extreme. This is why Holy Mother said, all suffering is a blessing. Even the suffering of the divine being when taking human form. It's a blessing for us. They need no blessings. So please read that again. It is so gorgeous.
If I were pure, never shall I taste the sweets of sweets of the. Let's start again. If I were pure, never shall I taste the sweets of the forgiveness of sins. If I were holy, I could never behold the tears. O love, O mercy, O divine humility, O forgiveness, O pity and compassion. If I were pure, I should never have known thee. Would thou love one who never died for thee, or even die for the one who had not died for thee? And if God dieth not for man, and giveth not himself eternally for man, man could not exist. For man is love, as God is love. Every kindness to another is a little death. In the divine image, none can exist but by brotherhood.
So any comments or questions from anyone about that?
This poem is, I think, could take a whole class to discuss.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So, can you expand on this? Every kindness to another is a little death. So we lose the little selfishness by.
Yes. The little self dies whenever we are truly unselfish. This is why Swami Vivekananda says, if you can be unselfish, if you can be truly unselfish, even for 5 minutes, it will transform you. Because you'll suddenly feel what it's like not to be burdened by that little self. When you're just freely giving of yourself, as God gives freely, God and Goddess give freely to us, then you have this feeling of, and it's said over and over in the scriptures in one way or another. It's said very directly by Muhammad, die before you die. Give yourself away in selflessness, which Swami Swahananda, by the by, this is the 10th anniversary of Swami Swahananda's Mahasamadhi. Swahananda left the body this night, which was a Friday, this day, which was a Friday, October 19th, 2012. And Swami Swahananda once stopped, we were walking, and we were discussing Christ as the eternal principle of the Son of the divine. And he suddenly stopped because we were, it was being discussed intellectually and so on. And he went right to the heart of the matter. And he said, he stopped and turned to me, which he did when he wanted you really to grasp something. And he looked at me with a very direct look and he said, we are each, these were his exact words, we are each called upon to be a Christ. What does it mean to be a Christ? It means to give your life for others, to surrender your life even unto death for others. So this is what this every kindness is, a little death. That's what that's pointing to. Anything else from anyone? Thank you for these very good questions, Swami.
I have
They
one more
really-
question, Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
So, the previous line where it says, would thou love one who never died for thee? How is that to be interpreted? Would thou love one who has never died for thee?
Well, what immediately follows it? Each kindness is a little death. So when we die for the other, it's just what Swami Swahananda was pointing to. We are each called to become as selfless as Christ. We are each one called upon to die these little deaths, or the death of a soldier in battle who gives his or her life for their nation. This is why it's said there's a special place in heaven for the soldier. This isn't just in the Islamic literature, although they're very, very specific in the Islamic literature, but it's said in many places. And certainly George Patton, the great American general, believed that. He had experienced it himself. I mean, he remembered his past lives. That's what he said. And he remembered the intervals between lives. This was his testimony. So the soldier, of course, is a dramatic example. Swami Sarvadevananda, living day after day after day after day, not for himself in even the slightest sense, eating what he has to, sleeping as he must, but giving his entire life in order to initiate people and to create those places where people can gather together so that they may receive this blessing of Diksha. If you just think about your Guruji, what is his life? His life is it is a death of himself. As he said to me one time on the phone, talking about ourselves as in the positions that we respectively hold. Of course, mine doesn't compare with his at all, but the principle is the same. He said to me, these were his exact words, we must think of ourselves as nothing. The small self. It is nothing. So this is the way I understand what you just asked about. But then, the poet points to just the small kindness. Each kindness is a small death. And the more we practice that, the more it becomes to where we understand what Swami Sarvadavananda was driving at when he said, working for your own self-satisfaction is working to satisfy nothing. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears, I think that'll do it for this evening. It's 8:31. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Hari Om Tat Sat. O beloved, make it so. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our mother and father. So until Saturday, when we'll take up again Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, as translated and commented on by Swami Prabhavananda and published under the title How to Know God. We're still very early in the second chapter, which is the principles and practices of Raja Yoga, of yoga. And then on Sunday, we'll talk about what is it we are trying to quiet. When we practice as a jnani, we're trying to quiet the mind, which they call ignoring the mind. We'll talk about what it is and why, what it is, why it takes such a titanically strong mind to actually practice as a jnani. Because what we're talking about trying to quiet or ignore is not called Mahamaya for nothing. So that's what's coming up next for any of us who choose to join in. Any final thought or comment or question from anyone? All right, dears. So glad you could all be with us. And may we just go forward. As this Christmas season is coming up, maybe we'll close to Christmas. We'll have a class. We'll have a Sunday talk. We'll have a Sunday talk on that book, A Christmas Carol, because it is really quite a remarkable. what Scrooge discovers about himself. All of spiritual practice for him is condensed into one night, so that he ends up completely repenting of who he was and waking up the next morning saying, I shouldn't be so happy. I don't deserve it, but I can't help it. So anyway, when we're close to Christmas. Oh, and by the way, the last talk this month will be on the day before Halloween, the Sunday before Halloween. And so we'll have that talk again, which is always a little different than it was the year before. But Halloween and the fall festivals, which, as you will see as we develop the talk, indicates that all of this comes from the worship of Kali. Even the colors, the black and the orange, that are the colors for Halloween, or Samhain, as it was called among the Celts. The colors are the colors of Kali, Kali's colors. So that'll be the last talk of the month. Halloween and the fall festivals. Anything else from anyone? All right, until next time, dears.
Thank you.
So joyous to be with you. And it is absolutely what life is all about. Jai Thakur Ma.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear?
He said, I took a quick peek at the next poem and I cannot wait for the next class. That poem is just too good.
Yes, well, Ranganathananda had quite a memory, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
He remembered the gems and was able to bring them out into the light so that they shed their luster. Yes, indeed.
and I mean, I have to remind myself that this is not a written book, right? This is like his speaking to.
Yes, without notes and without any books in
Unbelievable.
front of him.
Yeah.
He just stood up in front of those Shivananda members in Perth, Australia that evening in 1978. And this is what he said. Of course, it was tidied up a little, but it wasn't added to, and no one who does this kind of thing, and Ranganathananda was very tidy indeed, who could resist tidying up a little. But I'm sure that he did not add or take anything away. He simply polished off any rough edges. All right, dears. A sweet good night to you. May you all have a restful and restorative night.